Hi there. Today I'm interviewing Eve Simonsen. She's a certified psilocybin facilitator and a microdosing guide. She's hosting a sold-out retreat in Costa Rica later this year, which gives you an indication of the interest in the perimenopause space in this kind of treatment or experience. You can get on the waiting list for that. I wanted to make something really clear at the outset. In this podcast, she talks about the 5F2A receptor. That is the receptor that serotonin activates. And psilocybin is an agonist, which means that it activates it as well. So this is one of the ways that can be powerful to meet the reduction in estrogen that we experience throughout perimenopause and what that means for our nervous system and our well-being. There are a load of other resources if you want to investigate this further, and she talks all about what this experience is like. I wanted to say that I'm on the road in Canada, so this podcast is a little looser than usual. I had to do the interview in my nephew's bedroom in the last minute, which was not ideal, but it was the only quiet place. And right now I'm at a beautiful cottage in the Kawartha Lakes in Ontario. I just loved when Eve talks about what might happen if you consider breaking out of the matrix a little bit and how this journey actually starts the minute that thought occurs to you. I believe if you're listening to this exact podcast that your soul might be calling you to do just that.
I'm Anne-Marie McQueen, journalist and proud 50-ish woman, and we are here looking for the true truth in perimenopause, menopause, midlife, and beyond.
Opening our minds to other possibilities is not always easy.
Hop, I think.
You're all woman to me. All right, Anne-Marie.
I interrupt this regularly scheduled podcast to come to you from the beautiful Kawartha Lakes in Ontario because I want to tell you that you need to get my new guide, The Hot Truth About Hormone Therapy. Not just because I'm the first person in the world to map 12 different approaches to taking hormone therapy, from all estrogen all the time to never touch this stuff. Not because it's loaded with information based on scientific evidence, human experience, and more than 250 interviews with practitioners. Not because it's a result of 6 years of research and observation and careful consideration from a bird's eye view by me, but because this is truly one of the most important decisions you or the women you are caring for in your work can make. And hormone therapy is definitely not the simple thing that social media and media makes it out to be. I don't want you to take it. I don't want you to not take it. I want you to know why you're taking it. And wow, am I getting some really good reviews? Lara Bryden over in New Zealand, she's a naturopathic doctor and an author and someone I really respect. She read the guide. She said, in the age of menopause information overload, this guide is a much needed sanity check. Anne-Marie McQueen cuts through the noise with curiosity, clarity, and compassion, offering a clear-eyed lay of the land. Dr. Maria Luke, who is a menopause and joy coach and Halle Berry's menopause coach, said, your guide is full of amazing information, and I think that this course will be helpful not only for women, but also for those wanting to help them. And over in Australia, Dr. Kirsty Holland, who is coming out with her own book, This is Perimenopause, said the even-handedness of this guide is remarkable. Anne-Marie maps a field drowning in certainty, refuses every easy answer, and hands women back their own authority. As a clinician of nearly 30 years, I will be recommending it. Here's the thing. This guide is $47. The price is going up. After July 15th, it's going to be $97. Why? Because there is so much information in there, and I have organized it in a way that you can watch the 5 videos and you can flip through the PDFs and you can get through it in under 3 hours. So I want you to be able to get your copy now and become part of this discerning community of women who understand why they are using something, what it might mean for them, and figuring it out before they decide to take it. And also, if you're a practitioner, you're caring for women like that. It's a thoughtful, curious, open-minded group, and I want you to be a part of it. Also, I update this guide, and you will get all the updates for as long as I'm alive and doing this. It's $47 until July 15th. The link is in my bio. Now we will go back to the regularly scheduled podcast. I'm here with Eve Simonsen, a certified psilocybin facilitator and microdosing guide who lives at the intersection of science and spirit, which I love. I feel like I live there too. That's a beautiful place. I would like to just be able to go there like maybe once a week, meet up with a friend. Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't that be great? I'm really interested in psilocybin because I just think there's so many different modalities open to women in perimenopause and menopause, and so many things that can kind of unlock what we have inside. And I'm open about this. My own unintended experience was a couple of years ago. I went to a cottage and a friend of mine said, let's get mushrooms. And then we ended up doing them all weekend, which is just not like me, but it wasn't kind of what I used to remember. And some things Unbudged. That's the way I would describe that weekend. They unbudged. So, first of all, I'll just ask you, like, how did you get into this? What drew you to it? Yeah.
Yeah. I love the unbudging. I often use the term to get unstuck. Mushrooms are really a really beautiful tool to help us get unstuck. My story really began with my own experience with mushrooms. I had used them recreationally when I was much younger, but about 7, 8 years ago, I came to the medicine for much different reasons. I myself was in a very stuck space. I was at the beginning of a divorce. I was a mother of 2 young kids. I was dealing with a lot of pretty debilitating levels of anxiety. And it was actually my brother who called me one day and said, "You're coming with me. We're going out to the desert. We're going to have a mushroom experience and it's going to change your life." And we went to the desert, had a mushroom experience, and it really did change my life. From that very first journey, there were so many things that just opened up for me in ways that I had not been able to access before. And then it just kind of opened this very organic path for me. I didn't seek this work out. I feel like I've really been called into it through my own medicine journeys. I've gotten a lot of information and downloads from what I call my mushroom people. And they really I trusted this path and I kept following it. So what began very organically with me just getting to understand the medicine a lot better, doing a lot of research on my own, starting to work with people in the beginning, just people in my life. And that kind of started to expand further over the years. In 2023, I did go through a program in the state of Oregon after they released the regulated program, and I became a certified psilocybin facilitator, so 3 years ago. And now I do this work all over the place. I travel quite often to meet people where they are. I'm part of a few really beautiful platforms and communities of facilitators. One is called Psychedelic Passage. It's a really great, it's a facilitator referral network. And so it's kind of like a matchmaker to find psychedelic facilitators all across the country. And that's been my path. So it's a lot of a very organic start has turned into a really deep, passionate, purposeful way of living my life and supporting others.
Okay, we talked about the unstucking, the unbudging, but what is a reason for a woman in her midlife to do this work?
There are many. So again, to kind of talk about both the science and the spirit part of this, the on the scientific side, biologically, as we enter perimenopause, which is, as you know, can be a very lengthy process with a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of very erratic hormonal shifts before we actually start to enter the decline stage. And these erratic are mainly estrogen and progesterone that are shifting. Estrogen and our 5-HT2A receptor, which is the main receptor that psilocybin works on. I'm going to get a little nerdy for a little bit. The 5-HT2A receptor is what modulates serotonin. Estrogen and serotonin are connected because of this 5-HT2A receptor. So as estrogen begins to decline, our 5-HT2A receptor density basically decreases, which is a big reason why we experience the mood swings, the hot flashes, the sleep disturbances, the feelings of rage, the feelings of brain fog. All of these things are really, really connected to your serotonin levels. So the way that the decline of estrogen can be met with kind of a boost from psilocybin, this is why this work is really matters and is something that more and more women, I think, of a perimenopausal and menopausal age are looking to work with because of that aspect on the biological side. I will say too, on the more spiritual side, we have reached a point in our life by this lifetime where whether it's actually stemming from hormonal changes, we can't answer that yet, but we're also stepping into this different archetype. We're stepping into this wild woman kind of era. And so the spiritual side of, most of us, if we are mothers, our kids are getting older now. Being a mom is no longer like this full-time force in our lives. We actually have time to step back and to reconnect with ourselves. And I think as younger women, we really, for a lot of different reasons, can tend to disconnect with who we really are in our core. And this medicine, these sacred mushrooms, are really a beautiful tool to help us reconnect back to that space. So, again, there's this very scientific neurological reason that can start to explain why, working with especially psilocybin as you're entering this phase of life can be really beneficial. And there's a lot of this more kind of unknown to science, but known and felt in the body of a woman and in the experience of a woman from a more somatic, energetic, and
So first of all, you don't have to have like a full trip, although you can do that. You can microdose. So how can you explain the difference between those two and how someone might want to proceed if one precedes the other or how they work? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So microdosing is a practice of taking a very small, functional, what I call I call it a like the subhallucinogenic but perceptual level of working with the medicine. So the dose really ranges from person to person, which is why I do this in a very customized manner. But microdosing is basically taking very, very small amounts of psilocybin. Usually you're doing this in a consistent way. You're on a protocol. You might be taking it for 2 to 3 months at a time. Your schedule might look something like you have one dose day, then you take 2 days off, and then you have a dose day. So there's a lot of different protocols, a lot of different ways of microdosing. But the idea is that you kind of are giving yourself these little whisper medicines, right? Like whisper doses of this medicine. A macro dose, or what I refer to as a journey, is taking a much larger dose. This is when you really kind of disrupting a lot of these, when people talk about doing a large dose, you might hear a lot about the default mode network. The default mode network is part of our brain that really is where all of the patterning and kind of the chatter and when you're just on autopilot, your default mode network is responsible for that. So what psilocybin is also doing when you're doing these larger doses, especially, is quieting that default mode network. This is in part what allows you to create new thought patterns, shake out of, the way that you've been sort of conditioned, and start to create some new spaces for yourself. So, the difference between microdosing and macrodosing is huge. You can microdose and go about your day for the most part. You can mother, you can have a meeting, you can be out in the world. A microdose should not impact you in a way that you cannot go about your day. A macrodose is probably what you experienced in the cottage, where you would not want to be taking a meeting. It can be a very ritual, sacred time, and I'll say too, just because you asked, microdosing can be a beautiful lead up into being ready to do a macrodose. I tend to suggest it more often as a way of supporting yourself post journey. So a lot of times I'll suggest people start microdosing after they've done a large dose. It kind of keeps you a little bit tethered to that space and keeps you a little bit more connected to the things that you experienced during that large dose. That said, microdosing on its own has been really powerful and beneficial, especially for a lot of women moving through this phase of our hormonal restructuring.
Do you see it helping with perimenopause symptoms? You see it helping with sleep and anxiety, and can you walk me through that? All what you've seen? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the answer is yes. A lot of women are seeing benefits, mostly with mood regulation and with a reduction in brain fog. I will say those are the two things that most people are noticing with microdosing and the symptoms of perimenopause. Some people do have better sleep when they microdose regularly. I think one thing to mention about all of this work is that it's very, very individualized. Everybody's body is going to respond differently. Everybody is going to have a different dose. They're going to have a different time of day that it might work best for them. So, a lot of this work really is kind of trying and seeing what works best for an individual person. But yes, especially with the mood swings, the brain fog, the ability to react less from an emotional place, the ability to kind of become more of an observer of how you want to react in situations. These are things that a lot of women, myself included, have really benefited from microdosing, especially for the perimenopausal symptoms. And honestly, it's not just perimenopause. I actually did a whole independent research study a couple years ago around microdosing and the menstrual cycle in general. What my research study found was that for a majority of women, microdosing consistently reduced the level of PMS. It reduced the amount of mood swings. For some women, it really is effective with PMDD. There's actually since then been another couple studies specifically around PMDD and microdosing. So even if you do still have a menstrual cycle, you haven't even started perimenopause yet, psilocybin has been really beneficial in working with women's bodies. Unfortunately, there is very little research that has happened yet. And even still, as we're moving towards psychedelics becoming much more mainstream, in some states even legalized for therapeutic use, the research still has not even begun to caught up. That's a whole other conversation on women's health equality. But
Yeah, yeah, that's across the board, and then something like this, you can imagine. But I read somewhere that it can enhance hormone therapy efficacy.
yes, it actually absolutely can. So it's not, we don't look at, psilocybin as a replacement for HRT, but looking at it as like a synchronicity. The two together can really, really be the most impactful, way to navigate what's going on in perimenopause. So yes, they are definitely are sort of working in alignment with each other when used together. Yeah.
It strikes me that women in perimenopause would really do from the longer journey, just because I always feel like I just want those women to be able to get out of their lives for just a period of time, to step away. So can you just talk to me about that sort of like the intersection of stepping away, doing something for yourself? Because I think really a big part of perimenopause is like adjusting to that outward focus and turning to the inward focus of menopause. But it's really difficult when you're still caring for everyone.
Give yourself that gift of time and space where you really are just carving out this beautiful container for you to really just explore you, right? Like you said, like our whole lives are so much about how to show up, how to be, how to take care of others, how to get ahead, how to be in society, how to fight the patriarchy, how to be in the patriarchy, all of these things. And it is just layer upon layer upon layer. And a lot, I think, of what women experience in perimenopause is this moment of like, no, like no more. Like it is time for me to release, and it is time for me to reconnect with who I really am. And so having this moment, this day, this couple of days or week, if you have the privilege to be able to do something for that long, is the biggest gift that I can even think of giving myself or anybody to be able to give themselves. So, yes, the medicine is absolutely a huge part of what is happening when you enter this space. But like you're saying, it's also, I always tell people the journey really begins when you start thinking about going on a journey. When you commit to doing this, that's when it begins. And that's honestly when a lot of women, especially, start to notice some subtle shifts. It's before they've even sat with the medicine, before the mushrooms have even really done their part, this shift can happen. And I think that a lot of it is because you're actually doing something, you're committing to yourself in a way that you don't normally do. And that in and of itself is where the door starts to crack open a bit.
Isn't that true? Just the moment where you're like, I could do this.
Yeah.
I maybe should do this. That's beautiful. Okay, are there any side effects?
Yes, there are lots of side effects. And this is, when I'm working with people one-on-one or in a group, doing a lot of preparation sessions is part of how I show up, because there are a lot of potential physiological effects. I will start by saying that psilocybin, of the entire list of psychedelic or hallucinogenic or entheogenic medicines that you can work with, Psilocybin is absolutely at the top of the list for being the safest. While it is the safest, there are a few absolute contraindications that we have to be aware of. One is if you take lithium, not as a supplement, but if you're on a pharmaceutical lithium, that absolutely is a no-no because it can increase your risk for seizures. People that have certain heart conditions, there's a lot of things to consider. If you have high blood pressure, those are things to consider. They're not no-nos, but they're consideration. People that are on antidepressants, ADHD medications, SSRIs, SNRIs, MAOIs, those are all things that need to be explored and have conversations around. A lot of people do decide to taper off of some of their medications before working with psilocybin. It's not mandatory, but it's something that we do talk about in the process. Side effects range from really lovely side effects to some that are a little bit uncomfortable, especially when you are working with those larger doses. Some of the less comfortable side effects are you feel a little disassociated. Obviously there's visual elements. You can feel very kind of heavy in your body. Some people feel what is really resistance. If you kind of are resistant to what is trying to come up or be unearthed as you move through this process, it can be pretty uncomfortable. A lot of people get nauseous. It's usually quite short-lived, but that is part of it. Those are all some common physiological less desirable effects when you're working with the medicine in a larger dose. When you're microdosing, they really are, it's not often that you have negative side effects. The one thing that can happen is if you start with too high of a dose, it can feel a little uncomfortable because you might feel a little more impacted than you want to feel. So I have a motto of start low, go slow, especially with microdosing. And I would like to end on the very beautiful side effects or benefits, I'll call them. Especially with microdosing, most people notice, again, a decrease in mood swings. They will notice a general sense of feeling a little bit more connected to themselves, to nature, to situations or surroundings. Visually, it can be a little bit like you've been driving for a while and then you wash your windshield. So it's kind of this slight and really lovely visual enhancement. A lot of people feel decreased brain fog, so they feel like just kind of sharp and a little bit more focused, a little bit more kind of turned on cognitively. And then, of course, the beautiful outcomes and benefits that come from doing a larger dose, a journey dose, are absolutely endless, but just range from, full life transformation feelings to being able to, work through things, traumatic situations that we may have experienced in your past that you're now able to deal with. It's such a wide spectrum. It's actually kind of hard to list it all out because the reason that people come to this are just, it's so many reasons ranging from depression, treatment-resistant depression, anxiety, PTSD of varying levels, substance dependency. It's endless. Chronic pain, Lyme disease even. There's new research showing that psilocybin is really impactful for Lyme. So, TBI, traumatic brain injuries, there's just endless reasons that people are using this medicine and benefiting from it.
Wow. So when you go to a week-long retreat, how does that unfold? You're having one in Costa Rica, and I'll put the information in the show notes if people are interested.
Yeah.
But how does that unfold that week?
Yeah. So that week is it's going to be a special week. There will actually be 3 different opportunities to sit with the medicine itself. So typically when you are doing like a week-long retreat, we're sitting with medicine more than once. So there's the medicine element, but what we are doing for this one, which is really exciting, is I've brought in a really good friend of mine who is a traditional Chinese medicine doctor and herbalist. So we are actually combining traditional Chinese medicine and herbalism with the medicine. So we're really taking a look at the whole picture. This is very holistic work, looking at the entire body, moving through the different aspects of, herbalism, all of the different herbs that can also support you and help you through perimenopause. we're going to be looking at combining all of these things for a really, a really holistic top-down look at all of the different ways that you can support yourself while traveling through this beautiful phase of life that can be.
That's amazing. It's like a 3-for-1. It's like,
It
well,
is. It is a
you're in
3 for
Costa
1. Yeah.
Rica too. So yeah.
Yes.
How long is the journey itself? Is it, yeah, how
So
many?
journeys can last anywhere. I usually tell people anywhere between 5 and 8 hours. Again, everybody is very different. Some people move through it a little more quickly. Some people need a little bit more time. So it's on average, I would say around 6 hours is what people experience. And then there's, of course, like the night of and the morning after, you're still really kind of feeling the effects of the medicine. It's definitely still with you. But the active journey is, around 6 hours.
And what kinds of people do this? Because I'm sure someone's listening and thinking like, well, that's for someone else. It's not for me. And what kinds of people have you seen come?
Yeah, I love this question. I have literally seen all types of people from all walks of life, all age ranges, genders. It really can be for anyone. I will say that recently, I actually have just in my own work seen an uptick in an older age range. Actually, a lot of people who are in the range of like 60 to 80, honestly, and people who are moving through some really unique and different phases in life. But this work is for anyone who is curious. This work is for anyone who feels ready. Again, there are some things that we would want to talk about and work through. So it's not for everyone, depending on what, other psychological and medical things you might have going on. But if you're curious about it, I would say this work can be for you.
It feels to me like when you say you sit at this intersection of science and spirit, like that's to me understanding that there is work to be done in midlife to get sort of to a place, to a reckoning of sorts. How do you see that play out? Because I do see people who are just trying to avoid it altogether. And yeah, and I think all of us probably will have to do some sort of reckoning because life is life. And yeah, so I just wondered how you feel about that because I think you see that probably more than most people.
Yes. Yeah, this is a beautiful topic. One of my favorite mottos is you have to feel it to heal it. And I think this is really where this comes in. Again, there is so much programming, especially societal programming, or sometimes it's in the family, right? Like sometimes we are very much brought up to, you just operate, you don't slow down, you don't pause, you don't live from a place of how is this actually landing for me? How is this feeling for me? And all of that just builds and builds and builds until, yeah, you reach a point where one day you wake up and you're like, I'm about to enter this new phase of my life, and I don't even know who I am or how I feel about things. And that can be very alarming. And I think a lot of people do start to reach this, midlife where they start to, kind of see things very differently. And they start to realize, like, I've spent my whole life so focused on these things, and I'm now entering this part of my life where all of these things might not be as important anymore. And so, being able to come to a place where you can really explore like what's true for you, what's important for you, how do you want to live the rest of your life? It's a really nice little tender and sweet spot. And again, I think, this type of work really supports that kind of opening, that kind of inner reflection, inner exploration. And not everybody gets there, like not everybody. I feel really grateful for, the path that I've been on and the people that do find this space of, wait a second, like there might be more here. Let me break out of the matrix a little bit and explore that, because not everybody gets there. Not everybody is a cycle breaker. Not everybody has this inner awareness. So even if it's a soft little whisper, that's an opening, and that's something that, can be explored more deeply, and a whole new path can open up in front of you.
And what are people's main objections? Like when they're saying, "Oh, I'm interested in this," what are their main things that they fear that stop them from doing it, or they ask you about?
Yeah, it's I think that a lot of people are, well, they're afraid. There's a lot of nervousness. There's a lot of, I did this in college and I didn't have a good experience, or so and so did this and they didn't have a good experience, or I have no idea what's going to happen and that scares me. And that's a big one, and that's very real. And this is also why in the way that I work with people, there are numerous prep sessions that we're doing together to approach all of this, to talk about all of the different ways that, that I will be there to support somebody on their path, or things that they can start doing themselves that will be supportive tools and practices to have in place. I really look at this as, even if you have a challenging experience, which a lot of people do, there's also what's on the other side of that. And most of the time, the people that report having the most challenging experiences while doing this work and sitting with this medicine are also the same people that report having the most benefit and the biggest change in life. So, I think that is a big one of just being scared. And, I often tell people, like, if you're not at least a little bit nervous about doing this, that would make me nervous. That would be a flag for me, because
Yeah.
you should be nervous. You are entering an unknown space. There's no way to predict where you're going to go, what you're going to see, how this is going to impact you or affect you. So, your nervous system showing up in a way of being like, "Hey, I'm a little scared here about this." That's a sign of health, actually. And there's a lot of ways that we can, kind of work through that together. The other big thing is that people just think they can't take the time for themselves. I would love to do this, but I just don't have the time. I can't get away. I can't leave my kids. I can't do it. I just don't have the time. And that, that one hits me in my little soft spot in my heart, because again, like you brought up before, like that is so much of what, especially we as women, continue the story that we continue to hear is like, I don't have time for myself. And so, yeah.
This is not what I'm supposed to be doing as a mother, or as a, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'm not a mother, but I have it too. So it's deep inside of us, I will also say that if you decide to do it, probably your brain's going to just tell you at the last minute that it was a bad idea and that you shouldn't go. And it might even manufacture some sort of illness. That's what always happens to me when I do new things, or some pain in my body. It will all of a sudden develop like a sore ankle or something before a hike. Or
So fascinating, right? The mind-body connection it's just a phenomenon, actually.
Yeah. It's like a little disruptive individual that's like, well, she's not paying attention, so I'm just going to make it worse. And then I find it so funny. Well, I just think it's so interesting what you're doing. And I almost wish we could just like give people like a little glimpse of it. But it's unfortunately one of those things you just have to try for yourselves. It's just really neat to see people doing this kind of work. And it's on the fringes, but it's not if you are aware of it, right? Like, it's like we have these reality tunnels, I feel like, in the world. And so if this isn't in your purview, then it's just not there. But now if anyone listens to this, they're going to hear more about it. It's becoming quite mainstream. I will just ask you that at the last, because you've been doing this for a little while. Like, how have you seen the evolution?
Yeah. I've been doing this work for about 7 years now. And, I've seen the landscape has changed drastically, especially, in the last 3 years. I think when Oregon, which was the first state that legalized a therapeutic psilocybin program, when that happened, it really just kind of opened the floodgates, and other states are slowly coming online. Colorado just this year launched their program. New Mexico recently voted in a medical psilocybin program. I think that is slated to roll out next year. New York actually has a very exciting active bill right now that's going to hit the floor, I think, on June 4th, which would also be more of a medical program. But, the mainstream media has picked up, this, what they are kind of referring to as a psychedelic renaissance. I will say that, this has always been there. It's just hasn't been talked about as much. It's, so many more people that historically, because again of like the war on drugs and all of this sort of conditioning and honestly like government control that we've all been kind of under for most of our lives, since that story is changing, more and more people are starting to realize, well, hey, maybe this is something that I can do too. So yeah, I mean, there's also, there's almost just the floodgates have opened, and a lot of people are starting to explore this, which is beautiful. And, I also just like to always kind of come back to and honor that this work has been happening for thousands of years, and a lot of indigenous cultures, a lot of people throughout the world have actually turned to these medicines for healing for as long as humans have been around. So I think it's also really important to, just honor, especially the women, the curanderas, the healers who have been across the world in different lands working with these different medicines and supporting people, throughout history.
Yeah, I think if we can, one thing if you can open your eyes to is that a lot of the things that have been demonized were here long before anything else, and so that's again the conditioning, right? Like, and so just questioning everything. And as a former member of the mainstream media, I call myself a recovering journalist now. I would not recommend anyone read about psychedelics in the mainstream media. Like, so I'm wondering where you get your information, because this is the number one thing about anything new or old. I just think don't read about it in the Washington Post. You're just going to get some, 40, 50-year-old guy. I don't know.
Exactly.
Like I'm telling everyone, if there's a cool new thing, don't read about it.
Yes.
You gotta go. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like, it's like you'll end up probably not wanting to do something. So where do you read about it? Where do you get your information?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Also, I just want to say too, the other thing that I think that I notice happening in the mainstream media is that there's so much focus on, they're making some really kind of blanketed statements out there, and it's so important to me that people understand that, like, this work is very individualized, and what you read about happening for one person does not mean it's going to happen that way for you. And I think that's another thing. Yeah,
focusing on a negative aspect, right? Focusing on something negative,
but also sometimes a positive, right? Like, a lot of people come to this and they read a story about somebody that, has had treatment-resistant depression. They did a clinical trial or whatever, and everything just shifted. That doesn't always happen. So I think from both a negative and a positive, that's one of my sort of like little kinks in my side with all of this mainstream media is it's getting people both scared and excited at the same time, and it's losing the nuance. It's losing the very like individual way that this medicine works, and the fact that it's not a silver bullet. Like, you still have to show up in this. You still have to do the work yourself. These are tools. These are, they're beautiful healing tools. But to answer
That's a great point. That's a great point. Both, and of course, the news. If I can just, it's always what's rare, and then it makes it seem like it's normal, and they only write about the rare, exciting things. So, or terrifying things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I will also say that a lot of what they're writing about, especially if they're writing about, this like clinical trials and sort of the way that, I think the powers that be, and that includes like the pharmaceutical companies who are getting involved and really turning these natural earth-based medicines into synthetic compounds. This is a whole other tangent we could go.
Okay. Yeah.
That I know we don't have time for, but
well, that's a good point though. Yeah.
But it is, so I think that is a whole other thing to be aware of is, just where this is headed from, like, the FDA standpoint, where it's kind of
their little fingers.
Order that Trump just signed, it's like those are all mostly going to focus on the pharmaceuticals, the synthetic compounds, and not the nature earth-made medicines. So a little side tangent there, but to answer your question, there are so many psychedelic societies almost in every state. If you search, or in your city, if you search like wherever you live, psychedelic society, you will probably find at least one. There are tons of nonprofit organizations. MAPS is probably the biggest one to shout out. MAPS has been around for 30 plus years now. They were really at the helm of moving forward MDMA research, which made it until a year ago pretty far into FDA trials, and then it sadly got all shut down. But MAPS is a great organization. There are a couple of women-run organizations that are incredible. Hystelica is one of them. They are UK-based, but they're doing a ton of research with medicines on women's bodies. Another one I'll shout out is Deva Collective. They are based in California. They do a lot of independent research studies, not so much yet with psilocybin. They focus on some other medicines, but they actually have a lot of information on their website. Yeah, staying off of mainstream media is a really good idea. There's a great magazine called Double Blind. You can go to Double Blind. They've got a website, and they're one of the few people who's still printing out magazines, which I love. So there are, I know I'm leaving out a bunch.
Of course,
Lucid
but that's a
View,
good start.
another one. Yeah, it's a good start. And I can think of some more and send them over your way.
Thank you, Eve. I'll put as many as I can in the show notes. Well, thank you. I think you're doing important work.
Thank you.
It's really special.
I appreciate that so much. And thank you for the important work that you do and giving me this space to talk about what I do.
And if you're listening to the podcast and you have questions, wherever you're listening, if it's YouTube or Substack, drop a question and I'll shift it off to Eve, or maybe she can, I'll let her know and we can answer some of it, because I know I would have a lot of questions.
Yes.
Don't forget to do that. Yeah.
Yes, I love the questions. I'm here for all of the talking and sharing and question answering. So yes, please bring on the questions. I'm here for it.
Thank you. Thank you for talking to us about this.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hot Flash Inc. was created and is hosted by Anne-Marie McQueen, produced and edited by Sonia Mack. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Information received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem, i.e. menopause or anything else, or any healthcare questions, please promptly see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Anne-Marie McQueen and any producers or editors, disclaim any responsibility from any possible adverse effects from the use of any information contained herein. Opinions of guests on this podcast are their own, and the podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about a guest's qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. This podcast is owned by Hot Flash Inc. Media.